our HGA has us exactly where we need to be at all times. And
Really?
so I don't understand.
I don't agree with that at all.
I was reading that like just the other day. So it's like, how would it be that we're supposed to be like, let's say I'm supposed to be learning something in this lifetime about poverty, and then I decide like, okay, I'm gonna just make myself rich by doing all these like work with demons or something. It seems like, yeah, I feel like I could be leading myself further away from where I actually should be, because I'm not aware of what is actually good for me, because I'm still driven by like fear and greed and all of those things.
That's definitely true. And I think Crowley makes that point. It definitely is like, you can, if you don't know what direction you're supposed to be going, every step is possibly a wrong step. And if you put a lot of effort into doing something that isn't really connected to your true will, then yeah, you're going to have those problems.
Right.
And, but I think that people have a tendency to make the conclusion that their HGA is doing a lot before actually doing HGA work. And that I find is really problematic. And then that's when it becomes like a passive thing, like what I was talking before about we want to be active, not reactive.
Yeah.
It's almost like an excuse not to try to better yourself.
Well, that's a common theme in our society. Everyone's like, well, it happened for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is, especially exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, I was thinking about that today, actually.
Yeah.
So,
like,
precursive.
Like if I were to do
that's what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
Nothing happens for a purpose.
It happens for a purpose if we cause it to happen, for sure. And, like, relating to what you said with the poverty thing, like, that's a classic example. People don't like to see that. Although, having said that, I mean, Crowley said that about his own life, that to be the leader that he was, he had to go through certain things. I mean, he was in terrible poverty for a period in his life, and, it had like really terrible life situation. He said, like, that was necessary for me to take charge of the OTO. I had to go through those experiences. I mean, I personally feel like I've definitely been through some stuff that had the purpose of teaching me certain things, but I also think that the only reason I had to go through that stuff to learn those things is because I was being fucking stubborn and stupid about it to begin with. And that,
so in the beginning of doing evocation stuff, do you think it would be better to, because you want to like test these things, right? Do you think it's better to ask for more general things? Like, could you say, give me help with my concentration? Could
totally.
You say, I'm having trouble with my silence, can you give me like,
As long as you have
that kind of thing?
as long as you have a good objective yardstick to measure that with.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing like Raja Yoga or something like that, that's a really good one for just because like that's pure concentration. So like you will know if your Raja Yoga is improving or not, and if it's consistently improving with the way you were practicing before, or if it suddenly you talk to one in spirit and it just takes everything a quantum leap forward, and there's actually a lot of Goetic spirits who have teaching as their purpose, like they teach astronomy or the physical sciences or the liberal arts, like there are liberal arts demons, which is a weird thought, but anyway. And that's one of those are like the less sexy stuff in Goetic workings. People are always like, oh, I want to get laid, I want money, I want a better house or a bigger car or something like that. And it's good to use spirits for stuff like that, but that can become problematic if when it comes back to the action-reaction, if it turns into a reaction. And I've talked about this before. One of the ideas that I dislike the most is the idea that you should only do evocation in response to a crisis or when something goes wrong, just because that's, to me, is the wrong mindset to have. Like, when something goes wrong, you should deal with it the way you deal with it. When you have a plan and you want to go somewhere, then you evoke a spirit and deal with it like that. Because when you're in a crisis situation, you are vulnerable to all kinds of lies and stuff like that for these demons to have. And this was the point I was trying to make with the whole Paris working before. We want our rituals to work. We want our magic to work. That in itself is problematic. Like if you have a scientific researcher who wants to have a positive result to their experiment, that will affect how they conduct the experiment. And they will be able to delude themselves. And in terms of this stuff particularly, it is very easy to delude yourself into thinking that it's working. Like I often tell the story of my friend who was the chaos magician and was like, oh, I did this whole sigil ritual for money, and then the next day I found $20 on the ground, and it's like, wow, fucking, let's go to Vegas then, like probably would have found that anyway. Like it's not really that big a deal. And if your ritual is only worth $20, then maybe you should have shelled out for a better sigil or something like that. But Crowley racked up hundreds of failures. His rituals failed all the time. I think there was probably like 4 years solid he was trying to get a rich wife. That was his like main focus. And yeah, it just never happened for him, never worked out for many obvious reasons if you look at how Crowley conducted himself. But yeah, I mean, you can't be afraid to fail. And just the whole problem with, we do a ritual usually because we have some kind of desire, so you will have the incentive to want to see it work. And so you have to kind of have an objective standard beyond that. And that's why in the AA system it's so important to have someone reviewing your notes, reviewing your stuff, and have that someone looking over your shoulder to go, give you that little...
So, what is the point of doing the evocation stuff? Like, if, you're not... It seems like besides maybe, teaching you astrology or something, it just seems like you would only do it if you needed something that was, based in, belief or something. Because you're... You know what I mean?
Good question.
It's not about wanting stuff.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with wanting stuff.
Or you can maybe just do it to offer thanks instead of asking for anything.
You can do that. I don't see the point of doing that in an evocation. I mean, maybe if you're dealing with a god or something like that, but there's no reason. I mean, although if you do a goetic evocation that goes really well, then yeah, totally look that spirit up and totally say, yeah, thanks for the help, because that will help you out later. And there are times, what I will say, the main thrust, and the reason that I would do this in accompaniment to other things is, just like people, these spirits can surprise you. Like, they can give you an angle on stuff that you wouldn't have seen before, or you wouldn't know, or they can give you a piece of information or access to something that you wouldn't even know if you wanted. I mean, one of the things, the classical Goetia is not actually completely accurate, obviously, in terms of what it describes the spirits as being able to do. I mean, I think it's a good idea just to go around and, meet the folks, like call them up, talk to them, and ask the questions. What can you do for me? What would you expect from me to give to you? And, and see if you're willing to put up with that as well, because, I mean, I find it's rare that these spirits will make demands that are, out of this world or nuts or whatever, but, I mean, you don't want to be in the situation where you really need to get this result and then suddenly learn, okay, this is only going to work if I, perform an animal sacrifice that I don't want to do or something like that, you know what I mean?
I don't know whether this is going to be a stupid question or not. I personally don't work with the poetic spirits that much, but it's sort of could it backfire badly, if you weren't setting up this protection properly, if you weren't, and could it hurt other people that you're in touch with?
Yeah.
If you knew someone was messing with stuff like that and they don't know what they're doing, should you sort of keep your distance?
I would very strongly recommend that. I personally had that blow up my life at one point when I had got to a point where I was so familiar with the spirits, working with them so frequently, I stopped taking normal precautions. I would call them up just to let them tell me stories, because I'm like, oh, it's cool. Because they love to just talk. If you just want them to hang around and shoot the shit, then they will happily do that. But they'll be doing other stuff as well. It's just you won't be as aware of it, and you can very quickly it becomes very quickly. How do I put this? They can create gaps in your memory, so you can do things and not remember them, but they may not only be very short gaps. I mean, there was a period that I was really out of control with this stuff when I was much younger, and I would have, and it would only be a few minutes at a time, but I'd be talking to one of my friends, and all of a sudden they'd start freaking out, and and it would seem to be completely irrational, why are you talking like this? And they're like, well, why are you saying this and the other thing? And I'm like, I didn't say that. And they're like, you just said it now, it just came out of your mouth.
So what kind of precautions? Does it all have to be ceremonial based?
No, there's different ways of working with the spirits. I mean, and it would depend. For example, sometimes what I use is a form of. Actually, this would be more invocation, which you don't traditionally use with these spirits, which is more based on sort of African voodoo traditions, where you actually invoke the spirit into your body and let it, what they call it, yeah, exactly. But if you're doing something like that, I would say work with a partner. Traditionally, circle and triangle really, if you look at the traditional Goetia and you just follow the instructions, you should be all right. Although I would say be careful about where you store the sigils, because they have a habit of kind of like wandering off.
So would you have to do